Typically, when I make a road decks video, I've spent hours watching people in Japan whack off, compiling lists that I believe have a chance to win a few games. That is not the case with 30th Celebration. The new decks video is basically going to be the road decks video. So like the Black Eyed Peas said in their song that they had to change the name of, let's get into it and get stupid. Before I show off the absolutely moronic fever dream list, let's start with something that actually has a chance, provided you get lucky. If the new Gengar EX is knocked out by damage from an attack, you flip a coin. If heads, their active is also knocked out. This does mean Alakazam is a problem since it's ineffective in attack, same with Absol perioding all over you and Dragapult using those damn Phantom Dive pings. But almost everything else is fair game. There's a few ways you can approach this. One is completely foregoing attacking and just running Mist and Shadowy Darkness Energy. Enhanced Hammer still exists to ruin your chances against Alakazam, but so too does Mega Gengar. If they use an EX to KO regular Gengar EX, they only get a single prize. And if you flip heads, you'll create a chaotic stain in your pants, taking 2 or 3 prizes for minimal effort. How you're able to get both the regular and Mega Gengar in play is with Grimsley's move. While Grimsley can't move on your first turn, for the rest of the game he can flash any Dark type from your top 7 directly onto the bench. Use Academy at night to guarantee whoever you want, and you're ready to flip them off. What you have to remember throughout my 30th Celebration preview videos is that it's all guesswork. I can't simply look at Japanese results, see that Mega Ray is still a top 2 deck in their pseudo-Delta Rain format, and question my very existence. So when you see a list like this, know it's meant as a jumping off point and isn't baked in science or reality. Because all I really did was throw 4 Grimsleys and 5 total Gengar together with 51 other cards. There is a little method to the madness, like Legacy Energy further reducing the prize card somebody gives up. But realistically, you just want to do everything in your power to get as many Gengar in play as possible, then flip heads. Because as I learned with that stupid 151 Wheezing deck, strategy and smarts mean less than luck. For an attacking Gengar EX list, Toxtricity makes an appearance. Both of your Gengar need 2 Darkness. The new one can snipe 130 damage anywhere, provided Battle Cage isn't protecting their bench. And the Mega has a 230 damage attack, preserving energy. Obviously, you rarely want to Void Gale since Gengar EX getting knocked out is the entire point of the deck. And at just 280 hit points, it's not going to survive very long. I should definitely mention that bench space is going to be tight here, because Munkidori, Shaymin, and Psyduck all have a place. Psyduck prevents them from taking KOs with Dusclops and Dusknoir, while Shaymin stops a Slowking from shredding your bench. And Munkidori takes damage off those you Toxtricity to. Though I could see myself removing the Monkey since, again, letting Gengar get knocked out is kind of the point. A few things you'll notice is that Grimsley's still here to flash a Gengar into play, while Neo Upper allows either Gengar to attack immediately. Additionally, since Limitless won't have 30th Celebration in their database until September 15th, I had to get creative with the arts I used to represent the new cards. Ultimately, while potentially taking a KO every turn with Chaotic Pain, then following it up with Ability KO seems strong, make sure you shove a Horseshoe up your butt before playing Gengar. Because getting head is the only way you'll have fun. There's other somewhat viable decks I could have featured next, but I can't hold off any longer. I need to whack off, and looking at Igglybuff gets my juices flowing. For 0 energy, Igglybuff does 30 damage times the number of Pokemon on your bench with a maximum of 30 HP. In terms of cards that have something to do with the number 30, which is something I filter out on Tinder, Igglybuff is the best. Nidorina doesn't even evolve, and Golden Go is way too complicated. Now, that doesn't mean Jigglypuff's pre-evolution, which doesn't actually evolve in the TCG, is good. It's merely fun and a great way to reach the 1300s of Master League on TCG Live. The easiest, most obvious way of building the deck is by taking cues from Pitch Black Relicanth. Load up on several baby Pokemon like Tyrogue, Pichu, and Badoo, only attacked with Igglybuff and deal a maximum of 150 damage or 180 with a Brave Bangle. To be fair, it's not the worst idea I've ever heard. After all, I've had someone suggest that crunchy peanut butter is better for your feet than smooth. You're two-shotting almost everything with Igglybuff, but because of Munkidori, Battle Cage is a necessity. Except that can be easily bumped, leaving you very vulnerable like a Hisui and Arcanine. Except Pecharunt and Shaymin, who protect you against Munkidori and Slowking completely obliterating you, have more than 30 hit points. So anything you do to try and not get your butt blown out takes the deck from barely playable to wholly unplayable. Luckily, there's a couple options for weak Pokemon who remain safe on your bench. Hide and Sneak Poltergeist is safe from effects of attacks and abilities like Dragapult's Phantom Dive and Munkidori. Twilight Masquerade Poltergeist is safe from damage and effects of attacks, same with Misty's Magikarp. While these 3 would be perfect, you can only play a maximum of 4 Poltergeist. Worst of all, Magikarp and Old Poltergeist have a retreat cost. Elsewhere, don't bother with Chingling. It does 0 damage and your whole strategy requires you attacking with Igglybuff every turn. And while you might think Cutiefly wearing a Pearl necklace is a good idea, Lillie's Pearl only activates if it's KO'd by damage from an attack, not Munkidori or Phantom Dive Pains. As you peruse this list, know that Igglybuff has more holes than a tissue after I watch a For the Win video. Battle Cage is only helpful if it sticks, and Tyroad requires you to flip 2 heads to KO a Meowth with Brave Bangle attached. Which, come to think of it, is kinda awesome. For my idea here, you basically have to keep them off balance with Judge. Lucky Helmet draws you 2 cards and Pokégear finds your supporters. Blowing their flute maybe gives you weak targets, but let's be real. You ain't winning against Dragapult or Festivalite or Slowking or anything with Munkidori in stadiums. The other option is Igglybuff with Area 0. You're completely defenseless with Battle Cage out of the list, but now you have space for 2 more babies. So where the previous list topped out at 180 with Brave Bangle, this one can deal upwards of 240 damage. Since you have to play a Terra and Cornerstone was voted most likely to survive in its high school yearbook, Air Balloon is required, which opens up a hole for Magikarp to slide into. You still might want to include accompanying flute since Igglybuff needs to feast on the flesh of Meowth and Fez and Latias for you to win. But if you can avoid decks that do something more than simply hitting your active, you'll win at least 1 game out of every 6 or 7. If the internet is to be believed, 32 is old enough to be a grandmother. Also, Alolan Exeggutor is super cracked and I'm a monster for not including it in my top 10 best cards list or my best new decks list. Yes, 400 hit points is a lot. And it's not impossible to achieve with Meganium doubling Grass Energy, Ogerpon accelerating energy, and Heavy Baton preserving energy. The issue I've brought up several times is that they'll just target your Meganium. Whereas going after Meganium in an Ogerpon deck still leaves a thick boy in play with lots of energy, KOing Meganium here means you lose 250 hit points. So Dragapult can hit into your Palm Tree on 1 turn, then boss up Meganium the next turn, taking 2 knockouts. Worst of all, in that scenario, Heavy Baton doesn't activate since Exeggutor has to be in the active. But this is a safe space where everything goes perfectly for you and no one uses Dragapult. So let's assume you went first, attached to Execute, got Ogerpon Energy Switch Manual Attachment turn 2 plus Force of Vitality and Meganium. Well, even though Exeggutor now has 400 hit points, you're still only dealing 150 damage. But some spice that arises with Heavy Baton is passing energy back to a Chikorita, then evolving into Mega Meganium, giving you a great closer, kinda making you wonder why you aren't playing any of the 6 or 7 better grass decks. Sorry, I forgot to be optimistic. Anyway, to address some other options, there is a 30 hit point Execute who can evolve right away on turn 1 going first. Definitely experiment with the 2 options though, because if they can't KO your 150 hit point Exeggutor on their first turn going second, there's a chance you can get the full combo on your second turn. Additionally, there's this Rotund fellow who can also be your closer. You just need to get lucky on coin flips and plan your Heavy Batons properly. Realistically, the list is just Arboliva, Meganium, Ogerpon with Exeggutor taking the place of Arboliva. There's also Hero's Cape to boost your hit points to a potential 500, and Energy Switch is basically required to get 3 Fizzle Grass on Exeggutor. Once you get set up though, provided Heavy Baton doesn't get blocked by Jamming Tower, energy shouldn't be a problem throughout the rest of the game. For my final thoughts on Eggman, it seems like a worse chestnut. If they go after Meganium there, you can still impound them like a car and deal at least 90 revenge damage afterwards. Alolan Exeggutor falls apart like a house of dominoes without Meganium. Mega Venusaur, meanwhile, would be perfect to move energy around, there's just not enough space in the list. And Patrat over Celebi might be the move since Munkidori will ruin most of your plans. So what if I went a little crazy and built a version with Yanmega EX? While you could absolutely go with somebody like Alolan Exeggutor EX or Zip-Zap Frenzy Pikachu EX to power up the tree, those both require off types of energy. Sticking with Yanmega keeps it in the family like the Weasleys. The downside of going this route is there's no space for the Dunsparce, so you have to rely on Surfer and Prime Catcher a little more than you'd like to. I also decided to bring back the original Pokemon that was designed to destroy Dragapult before Lillie's Clefairy stole its Thundurus. Regigigas can one-shot a Dragapult for as little as 2 grass, and it has access to Heavy Baton. Just know that you will always start Reggie and none of your switch cards. The list has a little too much going on, yet almost everything is necessary. Exeggutor requires 6 grass to get the 250 hit point boost, so Meganium has to be here. Forest of Vitality allows you to still Yanmega turn 2 even if you whiff an early Yanma. And the Footful of switch cards allows you to activate Yanmega's ability, accelerating 3 grass to itself. Ultimately, I hope I'm wrong about Alolan Exeggutor being subpar. Problem is, a smart player will know to target your Meganium all day. So start a fresh account on TCG Live and enjoy beating off all those virgins who don't know what's going on. After fisting a stranger and making them quake, they have to flip a coin whenever they go to use a trainer card. If it's tails, the card fails. The easiest way to take advantage of this is by treating Seismitoad like a mill deck. Except where in other matchups you'd save your A-Spec until the end, Neutralization Zone blocking all damage to non-EXs by EXs can be played as soon as you get to fisting. Then it's a simple case of hoping they flip tails. If they do, that stadium or any other trainer they attempted to use is discarded, which likely means they can keep trying to use a supporter until one finally works. Aside from needing a coin flip to actually be useful, the other negative with Seismitoad is only having the Water Tympole and Palpitoad to evolve from. The positive is that there's a chance your bench Pokemon never get bossed up, and energy recovery with Night Stretcher or the simple act of drawing cards with Lilies might be taken away from them as well. There's a few ways to utilize Quaking Fist, but if you don't want to YOLO with coin flips, there's really only two. First up is Baby Frostlass. Where Badoo prevents them from playing items, Seismitoad might stop them from playing all trainers altogether. While they're struggling to finger their cards after getting fisted, you're building up damage with Baby Frostlass in addition to the 60 Seismitoad deals. Admittedly, that's super weak, which is why Munkidori's here, because their best counter to Seismitoad other than flipping heads is Munkidori to shrug off the damage. To maximize the annoyance, of course, Crushing Hammer makes an appearance, and Nighttime Mine forces Dragapult to need 3 energy for Phantom Dive, not 2. Normally, they'd just bump it with Jamming Tower or Risty Ruins or Watchtower. Here, that might not be possible. Add in Dedenne to recover a Crushing Hammer or any other trainer every single turn, and you have 60 cards. I understand how rough this list looks, but it's basically taking Frostlass, Munkidori, Badoo and jamming in 12 to 16 cards that don't really belong. Rocky Fighting prevents effects of attacks, so Alakazam isn't a problem. I just think the deck needs a closer like Bloodwind or Saluna EX who was a nightmare to start. Again though, just like Gengar, intelligence is secondary to luck. If you want to take a more direct approach, why not try Tier 2-ga? Should they flip a few tails, it's likely a lot of items will be discarded. Tier 2-ga does 30 damage times the number of items in their graveyard. It is risky though, as you are basically guaranteed to go behind a prize early. Then if your hammers or fistings aren't strong enough, they'll probably take a couple more, meaning Tier 2-ga has to punch above its weight. I basically just took the Frostlass list and modified it slightly. This time around, Patrat and Shaymin protect you from Munkidori and Slowking, while Sudowoodo can trap a Latias EX in the active. Yes, as much as I hate it, this needs to be treated like a pseudo-stall deck. Whether it's through Neutralization Zone or Retreat Locking, that's more likely to be your win condition over taking all 6 prizes. Unless you play the Frostlass build, because that one can slowly melt them like they're the Wicked Witch of the West who apparently never showers. And now the moment you've all been waiting for. Upon reading Ditto's attack, your mind becomes awash with possibilities. But then you think about it some more, slowly coming to the realization that Trust Your Pilot was right all along about its not goodness. For 2 colorless 30th Celebration, Ditto flips a coin. If it's heads, you can immediately transform Ditto into any Pokemon in your deck. As I mentioned in the full setlist review, there's several things wrong with this. First off, the 2 energy attack cost. Second, the coin flip. Third, whoever you transform into just kinda sits there while your opponent gets a turn to do whatever they want with them. And fourth, you're only getting 1 Pokemon out of the deal. But by utilizing Backtrack Badge and Crispin or Glass Trumpet, at least succeeding with Surprisingly Transformed turn 1 going second is possible. Still, to appease the masses, I dug a little deeper. Let's go back to Fantasyland and assume everything goes according to plan. Who exactly are you transforming into? Well, I looked at all 700 plus evolved Pokemon in Standard, and here's my thoughts. Even if you could transform into Palafin EX, that guy only needs 1 energy, so a 2 energy Ditto makes no sense. Unpheasant can take advantage of Backtrack Badge, except it's an attack, so it's not protected next turn, meaning you're still much better off using Risty Ruins into an immediate Pidove evolve. Team Rocket's Tyranitar would be fun for 1 turn, spreading 2 damage counters to each of their basics. Then it gets knocked out and you're screwed. Bramblegast is only useful at the end of a game, while someone like Tyrantrum would be perfect, except it requires a special energy to boost its hit points to 330. Yet the only likely way to use Ditto early is with Crispin, so you'll have to change the list to something resembling an Abomination. Bastiodon would be an amazing partner for Ditto until you remember that Ancient Bulwark only works when Bastiodon's on the bench. Jellicent and Tyranitar item locked with their abilities, which is great. But Badoo does it for free with its attack turn 1, and Frillish does it for a single Psychic, making Ditto redundant. Meanwhile, any Stage 1 EX without an ability would much rather Meowth or Pokégear for Salvatore than fumble around with Ditto. Okay, what about surprising them with someone immune to EX damage like Crustle or Sylveon? Well, those guys already have access to Ascensionable, Dwebble, and Eevee, which each require 1 energy, not 2. Now, I'm not trying to discourage you from playing Ditto. Well, actually, I guess I am. But if you want to try and make it work, I think some sort of Immunity deck is a decent place to start. Along with Crustle and Sylveon, these are the annoying ability-based evolved Pokemon in Standard. You can largely ignore Copperaja though, as it's only useful paired with Neutralization Zone. Chinchino EX meanwhile is too luck-based. Instead, you have to add 2 other immunity potentialers, except you won't actually transform into them. Both Manectric offer up a way to wall basics or evolutions depending on which one you choose. Remember that Ditto only gets 1 Pokemon. If they KO whoever you get, you have to repeat the process. So someone on the bench is necessary at all times, except whoever's on the bench won't have the immunity. It's an absolute flustercluck, and I curse past Pilot not for being breathtakingly handsome, but for thinking this was the sauce. Okay, for the actual strategy, knowing your matchups is the most important thing here. Well, I guess not prizing who you need and not having them in hand ahead of a surprisingly transform are the most important, but knowledge is up there. Against Dragapult, Arbok is hilarious. They can't ever get a Dracloak or Dragapult or Blaziken or Dusclops or Dusknoir. Except Munkidori exists, which is a problem since its ability means Arbok is 3-shotting it while they 2-shot you. Milotic, however, walls Dragapult completely while also 1-shotting Blaziken. Farigiraf isn't that much better than Crustle or Sylveon, but against basic EX heavy decks that aren't running Cornerstone Masked Ogerpon, well, you probably win, because no one's countering the Giraffe the same way they do with the Crab. Dreadnaught's also useful against Dragapult since Phantom Dive deals 200 damage just like Blaziken's Smolder Salt. They will instead use Jet Headbutt and Munkidori though, so be aware of that. Speaking of, I was unaware that you'd also need to block Alakazam. Empoleon EX is an option, but Skeledirge is better since it only requires 2 energy to attack. Its ability is a mist energy, meaning they can never give your Crocodile a powerful handy. Covering all your bases like you just hit a walk-off homer, I think this is what a Ditto immunity decklist should look like at first. Seeing this monstrosity in all its glory though, I have to admit that like the new Yellow Card song featuring Avril Lavigne, Ditto broke me. I mean, what am I doing with my life? 8 different stage 1s, 4 Crispin, and 2 Call Bell just to hope I always go second and start Ditto and Crispin and maybe have to use Secret Box to find everything while also flipping heads? This will never work. Which means I will absolutely do a 3-hour stream with Ditto where I have several mental breakdowns. So make sure you follow me on Twitch or sub to the VODs channel to watch it all unfold. Elsewhere, Steven's Metagross seemed great until I remembered that you don't want or need Crispin in that deck. And how is Ditto simply better than a turn 1 Poffin into Rare Candy turn 2, especially when you have Genesect to find your evolutions? Well, Badoo blocking Rare Candy. But I'd rather take my chances of them not getting an Itchy Pollen versus me hoping I flip heads with Ditto after getting the 3-card combo to even attack. And any other stage 2 I came up with, like Slacking or Mamoswine, was immediately invalidated by me remembering that Grand Tree exists. Colress or Petrofor at turn 2, get a stage 2, and the only luck you need is not prizing it. For Gengar specifically, it requires 2 Darkness to attack. How's Ditto going to attack turn 1 in a Dark deck? Janine plus Energy Switch plus Manual Attachment? Not to mention, Dark decks already have Grimsley. At least for Mega Charizard, you can solve the whole taking a hit thing with Ninetales, and Charizard's existence means Oricorio is activated. But if you play Vulpix and Oricorio, there's a good chance you start them. So now it's not just a case of getting 2 energy on Ditto in a fire deck, you also need Air Balloon or Latias EX. Yeah, as the kids would say, I'm Skibidi crashing out from this one stupid freaking card. But since the moment Ditto was announced, everyone assured me that this cracked Dragapult open like a butt. They were, of course, ignoring that the best parts of Dragapult are Dracloak and Badoo and Crushing Hammer and Unfair Stamp and Munkidori. Still, I'll build a semi-coherent list to satiate your voracious appetites. Dragapult already runs Crispin, which takes care of the first hurdle. Along with 4 Ultra Ball and Meowth, the odds of finding a breeder's best friend turn 1 going second are quite high. However, in order to inject Ditto into this list, you have to remove things like Crushing Hammer and Badoo. Not to mention Latias must make an appearance, same with Air Balloon. Because if you're stuffing Ditto in here, you want to transform right away. Should everything go according to plan, you now have a Dragapult EX in play at the end of turn 1 fully powered up. And your Munkidori can help remove some of the damage it inevitably takes. But as you can see from the list, there's 2 seemingly random backtrack badge thrown in because if you'll recall, Ditto is still a coin flip. You essentially have to hope for the badge to be in your opening hand. Otherwise, you only get 1 shot, and if you miss your chance, you'll blow the entire game. For other options, you could go with a deck featuring the 3 playable Greninja EX until you realize they really only want a single water energy. And while Salamence EX is an option, you're better off waiting until the good Komodo and Delta Rain this November. That pretty much just leaves Hydreigon EX as the only other potential candidate. It's the same idea as Dragapult. Hydreigon needs Crispin anyway, so do the Meowth thing, get Ditto in the active, and hope. But as you peruse the list, you've probably already realized why this won't work. Again, Ditto only gets 1 Pokemon. So a list focused on a stage 2 still requires its basics in either Rare Candy or the stage 1. I don't know, maybe I'm putting way too much emphasis on the whole going second and Ditto only being useful on that 1 turn. I'm not, but you could always pivot to a Carmine build hoping to always go first. Power Glass does become an option there, though Backtrack Badge should always be your #1 choice for tools. And this strategy has some big holes that Dhelmise can penetrate with its massive swinging anchor. Also, even after all this complaining, I didn't even mention Mega Delphox, Tatsugiri EX, or Reuniqueless. Tatsugiri isn't too dissimilar from Ditto, except where Ditto only gets you 1 Pokemon, the Sentient Sushi can accelerate up to 5 Pokemon into play or 8 with Area 0 and doesn't require a coin flip. It does need 3 different types of energy, but with Sparkling Crystal and Crispin, you're there. So it almost makes all this work I did to make Ditto playable completely unnecessary because we already have a better Ditto no one uses. Probably the dumbest deck I've ever created, which is definitely saying something. We end the video with Pikachu, Pikachu, and Pikachu EX. This little guy does 40 damage times the number of Pikachu and Pikachu EX you have in play. The only true EX candidate is Terra Pikachu since it activates Area 0. This means Pikachu can swing for upwards of 320 damage one-shotting Dragapult. But then you see the 3 Lightning Energy attack cost and realize what I realized, and it's that I have lost all the light in life. Realistically, what are you going to do? Mega Audino the energy into play, giving out 3 prizes when it's KO'd? Or how about Magneton? This guy gives up a prize to accelerate 3 energy. But if you decide on Magneton, why bother with Baby Pikachu? The EX deals 300 damage on its own or 350 with Light Ball. I can't believe I actually put these 60 cards together. I went with Mega Audino since you're likely to get 2 Kaleido Waltzes in before it's KO'd. But what are you supposed to do after the Baby Pikachu gets knocked out? Hope? Use Power Glass on the EX? Yeah, there's no way this works, and you've literally lost IQ points for seeing this image. I think what we all learned today is that happiness is a myth, and the only thing to celebrate is how with each passing day we're one step closer to the edge. And I've already broken.